sound,
I mean, if you could do one of the.
WinCam transition.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll wait for Chris.
Viewing public. Yeah.
Can we confirm with WinCam that the sound is working? We've just got some notifications that it's.
Home audiences are, the home audience.
I know, yeah, we don't want our ratings to drop severely.
0.1 to 0.
Okay, we'll start off with the town manager's report then, and go right into that. Richard?
Thanks, Mike. So in the packet is several pieces of information that deal with a couple of topics, two of them at the transfer station in particular. And Jay Gill is here to talk about these as well. So the recommendation from our managers at the transfer station is to close the swap shop for the winter months. So if the board saw fit, we would suspend operations. I've provided you a couple of pictures of the kind of general conditions down there. And I think suspending operations for a couple of months will allow the DPW to catch up, kind of clean that section of the transfer station out, and then resume activity as the better weather comes in and around March, April of 2018. So unless the board had any strong reservations or concerns, otherwise I would authorize Jay and Norman to go ahead and begin the suspension, and we'll resume again come the spring of 18. Get it reorganized.
Richard, I would just concur that is becoming an eyesore. The only thing I would ask is if there's a way to, just seems like people are just throwing
Stuff, yeah, no, Jay and Norman and I haven't talked, but Norman and I have talked in the past, but Jay and I have talked recently, and Jay and Norman have talked about trying to come up with a better process for having it run. I mean, it provides some benefit, but when it gets into the condition that you can see in some of these photographs where people are just literally just dumping stuff, and much of it does not have any value for either, it's not resold, but just repurposed. We think we may have to curtail, have some rules and regulations about what gets dropped off. But, you know, for anybody who needs that toilet that's still there, Norman, when can they get that? Probably until the middle of next week. So, yeah, so it's stuff like that that gets dropped and we know is not going to be used. And then the crew just has to end up putting it on the conveyor belt, and it ends up getting offloaded as part of the solid waste. But that's a couple of extra steps that have to be taken, and probably unnecessary ones if we can tighten up what it is that gets authorized to be left there.
There are some incentives through the DEP to having a closed in swap shop. You know, have we looked at that as an opportunity down the road? I think there's some financial opportunities.
We can,
there for
you know,
yeah.
we can, Norman, we can try to ask Caroline whether or not there are those financial incentives that would help us set it up in a more organized way.
Well, we get recycling dividends points every year, and you get we get 1 point right now just for having a swap shop. If you have a closed one, you get 2 points, and they're each worth $1,100 each year. That's pretty much the incentive on having a closed swap shop would be the state.
We can look at that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, also the space is so large and open that it's expanded, you know, that tent is not really regarded as a place to contain things.
Right.
So, you know, maybe having something enclosed, and I know Wellesley has one, right?
Yeah.
In Acton.
The superintendent of Wellesley sent me all of his files on how they organize their tent. They have a group of volunteers, at times up to 100 volunteers, and the swap shop's only open when volunteers actually check in people and check the materials that are being dropped off.
Oh, okay.
And Acton has a similar plan that they started this year. They're only open Fridays and Saturdays, and only when they have volunteers to check in people. So we're going to look into that.
So we may have some recommendations for you
Yeah.
upon reopening in the spring.
Okay. But for the time being, that you'll move
Just
forward
close it
with-
up and.
You'll close it up,
Yep,
okay.
and clean out all the debris that's there, and it'll, we'll get back to it in the spring. The second thing regarding the transfer station is a request for about a little bit less than a 2-month parking license in the same area that we were using to park high school labor groups from the Winchester High School building project. So we're being asked by Leahy, which owns the building kind of right out in front of where the parking spaces are, on the other side of the swale, to allow them to park upwards of as many as 100, but probably not that many. But that's what the site accommodates for about a 6-week period beginning in January and ending at the end of February. So if the board would see fit to authorize that licensure, then we would work with Anderson Krager, in putting the necessary documentation together. But I've reviewed it with Jay. He believes it can be accommodated. Leahy would bring in the necessary fencing, to delineate the parking area. They understand no holes can be poked in the surface, and they would be responsible over the winter months to maintain it, plow it, keep it available, provide us the necessary insurance. All that stuff would be part of what legally we would put in place if the board saw fit to authorize us to move forward.
So they noted that the hospital security staff would open the gates and
Right.
close them in the evening. Is there sufficient lighting there for people who are going to their cars late in the evening? I mean, it's pretty dark now if you're working 6, 7 o'clock shift.
Hello, I'm Steve Shea from Winchester Hospital. We're planning to have the training in there end at about 5 o'clock each evening. And the goal then will be to close down at 6. So given that we're getting lighter, it'll be tough right at that end, but we think that most of the people are gonna be out at the 4 o'clock time window. So just a little bit close, but we think it'll be okay for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
So, Mr. Chairman, I would then make a motion that we permit the Leahy Health, doing business as Winchester Hospital, to use additional parking spaces at the transfer station, as described in their letter of December 7th,
Subject to suitable.
subject to suitable negotiations and fee and whatever, yes.
And insurance names
Yeah.
the town as.
Yeah.
Art would make sure we're protected, so.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Skilling's project status update is on the list, so as the board knows, we continue to move forward with the project, and actually, the light bases, the footings are being put in. If you had any time to go over there, and Meg has supplied a photograph for everybody's consider. Have we circulated that, what those stanchions, the bases look like? So we could do that for you if you haven't seen it yourself. It's expected that the synthetic turf will be delivered to the project by the end of the month. And as we mentioned to you, we'll store it at the end of the parking area off of where the ballpark is on the left-hand side. And we're making some accommodations for that lost parking out on Skilling's for the time being for Winchester High School staff. But that'll all be there and ready to be installed as soon as the weather allows us to pick up that process in, the March and April timeframe. But otherwise, it's on schedule and on budget. Yep.
Yeah, Richard, so the turf will be delivered, it'll be on site?
Yes.
Who owns it at that point, and if it's damaged? or
It's ours. It's the contractors, but it still has to be inspected. Yeah.
Who owns it?
Contractor owns it until it's installed, yeah.
Right, so if there is damage or whatever,
Yep.
there's their
Yep.
coverage.
There's information in the packet on the letters from MSBA. As you know, the town, the board, this board in collaboration with Winchester Public Schools had submitted a statement of interest to MSBA for the two remaining elementary schools that everybody believes will need some attention in the not-too-distant future, the Lynch School and the Morocco School. MSBA toured the facilities with a group of folks from the school department. I went along as well. They were impressed with the level of maintenance on the facilities. In some cases, showing good doesn't always do you good. But in our case, I think it confirms that the buildings are, even though they may be beyond their useful educational life, and we're going to be pressed for space with some of the enrollment projections that the committee is undertaking, currently the MSBA said that they're not interested in putting the projects forward under their grant program. It's up to the town to decide whether or not to resubmit the two projects in 2018. That process opens up again sometime in February. So the school committee can take the same kind of position, forward it to the board as they did the last time, and we can resubmit and hope that in the round in 2018 we might fare a little bit better. But for the time being, they're just telling us that it's not in the list of priorities for the 2017 awards. So can take any questions on that. Otherwise, the letters kind of tell you what it is you have to know.
I know they had mentioned at one point that they would like to discuss kind of combining the schools into one. Did they give you any indication of whether or not that was something that they would require before considering an application, or just said, not right now, but bring it back to us?
They did not get that far down the road in letting us know one way or the other. It is a position they could take when it comes time to consider Winchester for the program. It is probably something that they'll review at that time, whether or not a single school is their preference, as part of the solution to the upgrade for Lynch and Morocco. That's a whole negotiation that'll take place somewhere down the road when the time comes. But as of now, Mike, no, they did not indicate a preference one way or the other.
Yeah, I guess we should, I think, revisit this shortly and talk with the school committee about resubmitting it, which I think would be a good idea. I think one of the things we, in the school committee, did in the discussion on the McCall was to have that Donahue Institute take a look at the trends that were driving enrollment in Winchester, and I think they were a bit eye-opening. And I don't know that they were really incorporated in the original submittal, and I think going back and looking at that and resubmitting that information, making a stronger case. I don't think we should let up, because I think both Lynch and Morocco are going to need the upgrade in a reasonable time. I think it'll take, we'll have to appeal a bunch of times, but I think we should press forward to do that.
Sounds good.
Something to do for this.
Yep, something to do for,
Yeah.
in our spare time.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
That's it.
And that's it?
You have your presentation team ready there, I think, which is about part of the master plan and kind of a nice segue from the statement of interest on Lynch Morocco to the McCall schools.
Hearing on 7:15.
No, we're not doing the hearing?
Not doing
Yeah,
it.
we're going to republish that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to do any matters from the audience before.
Sure, yeah. And at this time, we'll hear any matters from the audience that are not part of our regular agenda. Not hearing any, we'll move to the first item of business, and the McCall project. I don't know who's coming up on that one. Bob Deering, Susan Radicchio, Chris Nixon.
I do not.
Thank you, and if you could introduce yourself too, and we'll start with Chris.
Chris Nixon, I'm the vice chair of the school committee. Susan Verdicchio, Chair of the School Committee.
Bob Darien, Chairman of the FBBC.
Vince Dumas, Flatmore Architects.
So thank you for having us. We're really happy to update you on the McCall expansion project. As you will remember, town meeting voted funding to go ahead and finish designing and building Phase 1. And Flansburgh has been working on the construction drawings and has come to the FPBC a couple of times for us to hammer out some of the details about the courtyard, to what degree to fit that up so it's usable space, some plantings in there, and also some issues about the proper way to heat it. And so everything's pretty much nailed down, and they're making good progress on Phase 1. Also, town meeting voted money to do the schematic design for Phase 2, which is larger. We want to keep that moving forward so that we can get that built in order to meet the enrollment growth that we anticipate. And a working group has been formed to, much as we did with Phase 1, a working group to work with Flansburgh to take the basic ideas, the basic program elements of Phase 2, the 6 classrooms, expanding the cafeteria, adding some locker room, improving some locker room space for the athletic department, and figure out exactly where those should go and how they should look. And we'll, work on that to come up with a much more detailed plan, and that would be the basis for cost estimation that we would then be able to bring to you to vote on anticipated override question in March. So if you don't have anything to add for that, we should maybe just turn it over to.
I would just make a comment about schedule. We did hear from
Right.
Richard through Meg. We understand you have a timeline when it comes to a decision around a spring debt exclusion override, so there is a question, and I would presume the board would like to know before you throw out a question what it's going to cost. So I think you all should have received today a rough outline of what that working group is trying to do over what amounts to basically 13 working weeks. We're hopeful by the latter part of January to have settled on an approach. As Susan said, there's different ways to skin this cat, so there's some interesting options that Vince will share with you tonight. I think the working group will settle on one in time to certainly be able to give the board a narrowed expectation of cost. But the work doesn't stop there, because we recognize you'll be making a decision in February, so that'll be really more at that point about kind of narrowing in on that scheme, developing it further, and then Flansburgh will be developing cost estimates that the EFPBC will be looking to reconcile the project scope, so the materials, the systems, with what's in that estimate.
So the target date right now to have all that information kind of coalesce around a statement or a plan is January 22nd. That would be the board's second meeting, Monday meeting in January, and the hope is that Flansburgh, working with the EFPBC, Bob's group, will have kind of progressed that scope along, and will have as solid a cost estimating number that we can get in order to be able to message out to the larger community what the expectation might be around the override request, if the board is going to see fit to put it on for March of 2018. So it's a short window. It's a little bit of a sprint here, but the EFPBC has delivered before. I think Flansburgh has a good head start on, as Susan said, on what was authorized at fall town meeting and the money that was put in place to begin, that schematic design review and the cost estimating that go along with that. I think it's important for the school committee, all parties, to kind of keep the case in front of the larger community. People will want to know why is space needed by September of 2020? What does that enrollment information from both Flansburgh's previous work and the UMass Donahue Institute show us? in terms of what will happen for the middle school by September of 2020.
So we're expecting 147 kids by the fall of '21, about 130 by September of '20. So to Richard's point, although phase one is really important, it frankly addresses an immediate short-term space crunch. Phase one doesn't get us the space we need by September of '20 because the kids just continue to come.
And I think that we were skeptical as well in one of our meetings that amount of kids were going to keep coming. So we had requested the additional kind of peer review and report from UMass Donahue, and it confirms what Flansburgh had indicated. And so I think that's why we're moving forward at a brisk pace here for phase two.
Okay. I'd just like to probably give you a quick rundown of what we're doing and where we're heading. As Susan mentioned that, we're in phase one. We were actually working with Flansburgh now because we do have construction drawings. We're preparing those so those can go out to bid. So we can, water contract and get those 3 classrooms on board as soon as possible. As far as phase two, we've been, there's 3 of us from my committee that sit on the working committee because we're developing the schematic diagrams for phase two. And part of the process is that, like in any of these that we've done over the last 22 years, when you first start off, you have the program needs from the school department, and then we come up with various options, and you just start working through those. It's like, will this one work? Will that one work? What's the cost of that? So we've been working through that, and we're headed toward, I think, a solution that we'll probably all agree to. But until you work through it, make sure it meets all the program needs, it can be built in the time schedule we need and within the cost that we anticipate it will be. So we meet on the first Wednesday of every month right now with Flansburgh. We meet the third Wednesday of the month, finishing up the high school. So that will free up that time. We'll probably really get into this. We may be meeting the first and third with Flansburgh as we get toward the end and trying to meet the schedule, and so we can get a cost estimate. So that's where the FABC is right now.
You gotta make sure we fill that time for you right away, Bob.
I know, you don't want to get any voids. I'll doze off and.
Okay, so Vince, phase one?
Very good. No, this is phase two.
This is phase two.
one,
Okay.
basically, phase one we've done, but this is phase two. So this is the back of D wing, and we were looking at, when we did the study, of putting on an addition to the back of this, okay, with 6 classrooms, 3 stories high to match the height of that original building. And that we're calling option 1A. So in this plan, you can see the existing building shows, the yellow is where the existing library is, and we were going to place 6 classrooms to the outside of that. And we looked at that, as well as we had the teacher's lounge space at the bottom at the A wing. That was originally in phase one. We've moved that to phase two. The cafeteria expansion, that was part of the process of adding space because of the enrollment enlargement, so that we had to have additional areas, seats in the cafeteria. And then we looked at the E wing, which was to put in some team rooms, which is basically the current situation where they're kind of de facto using some space in there right now for team rooms. So this was phase 1A, and it's kind of all over the school in this arrangement. We kind of did a little bit of thinking about that, and there's a lot of concern about replicating the facade that I showed you as the existing facade on that D wing. And so the concern was, well, how are we going to replicate that, and how does that look when we put on the 6 classrooms, and how does that make that, integrate to the rest of the back of the school building? So in this option, we said, okay, well, what if we moved the library out? So we build the same 6 classroom spaces, 4 on the first 2 floors, and then on the 3rd floor, instead of covering over that library space, we moved the library out into that 3rd floor level, and then find 2 other classrooms within that library, the existing library space, and convert those. And then the other 3 sections, the cafeteria expansion, the teacher's lounge, and the team rooms, are all very similar. So these 2 are 1A and 1B. But then we kind of started looking at that, and we see the yellow kind of spread out over the whole plan, and so we've kind of taken a third look at it and said option 2 here, and we've kind of looked at that and tried to combine everything into one space. So where the cafeteria is already going to be a significant addition to the building, we thought about maybe adding the classrooms near that, so at the end of the E-wing. And what that does is it also allows, because the E-wing has an additional level in the basement, it allows us to provide some space for public toilets as well as the team rooms underneath the new classrooms and the cafeteria addition. So it basically takes everything and brings it tighter to the site, which is better in terms of sort of the whole interruption of the school and how that access for the contractor gets in there. So the teacher's lounge is a renovation of an interior space, but then the other two addition spaces are all confined to that one area. And we're going to be pricing up all the three different options to see which one comes in cost-wise, but right now we don't have anything specific on that, but this is where we're sort of headed at this point.
So this makes the whole thing a little more compact, or you're building the same square footage, but in one area, and you're not digging up and putting new foundations in off the D-wing. Kind of ingenious, I thought.
Would this also mean less disruption for existing students?
Presumably so.
Yes. I mean, if you go with the first option, I mean, you're dealing with the library. And this option here is similar to when we did the E-wing, because when we did the E-wing, the school was occupied, and that back was right up against those classrooms when they were putting steel and all that. But it wasn't that bad, and we worked through that. But I think in the first option, I think there'd be far more disruption to the operations of the school.
And I would also just point out, our students are actually dismissed to the back of the school for the buses in the afternoon, so they're egressing through that D-wing today. That's the bus loop just creeping off the edge of the screen there at the top. So the idea of kind of moving away what would be an active construction zone from that kind of activity also has a lot of appeal.
And it'll cost a lot less because it's all consolidated.
Well, I mean, you only excavate in one spot, and you gotta do excavation to move the cafeteria and get to the utilities, so it's, you know,
Could be some economies of scale.
there's gotta be some there, because, actually, if you did that at the end of the library, you're just constructing there, and then you're over here constructing doing the cafeteria, so you have two active construction sites going on at the same time instead of, or not, in two different areas instead of all in one area.
It also preserves the look of that end of the library that everybody was expressing some concern with, that how would we replicate the detail that's currently existing.
Can you go back to the first two and then come back to it?
Yeah. So in this version, this is what we had originally had conceived of, adding 3 levels of 2 classrooms apiece and preserving the existing library. What it does is if you had looked at this, there's that arched window, which represents that's the end of the library. And basically what we would be doing was we'd be chopping that off right to the bottom of the arch. And so that would all be enclosed within that first edition of classrooms. So your classrooms would now be at this end. I mean, we could replicate it. It would take some cost to do that, and because the difference is that in this one you have an entrance, and you're creating an entrance, and you're trying to demonstrate to the public that that's an entrance, so that the architecture reads to that. If you put it as classrooms, you kind of change the effect. We're also adding a link which would, you know, have a different entrance where the new link on Phase 1 is going. That's basically becoming a new entrance. And so now the character, what this would look like if we put the addition of the classrooms, it would be a little bit different.
One thing which we brought up the other day is because that gets pushed out, and the buses come in the back to drop off. But right now, you have a pretty good queuing up area. When you push that out, you're probably within 5 feet of the curb, and you have, I don't know how many kids come out in the school buses, but you got a tremendous amount of kids and very limited space to put it. So that would probably be a safety concern, you know.
Right. So you can see that little plaza that was there currently existing gets covered over essentially with the addition.
look at the other option off of the E-wing there, how does that work as far as kind of flow through the school? And we're adding a lot of classrooms there, and somebody's got to get over to the B-wing from, so we're adding a lot of foot traffic. And, phase one there, we kind of added a connection to the D-wing, but was there any discussion about connecting that portion to the D-wing or doing anything like that?
Yes, we did, we talked about that a little bit. I think
Yeah.
the principal was basically indicating that those classrooms would be, I think, 7th and 8th grade.
Okay.
And so that, on the D-wing, they're mostly 6th grade, and where we have that link that connects from the D-wing to the new 3 classrooms in phase 1, that works well because it's all basically related to 6th grade. When we put on the E, in the end of the E-wing, it kind of relates more to the existing classrooms that are there.
Can I also offer, Mike, that if this concept were at the other end of the E-wing, sort of on the north side, we really would be kind of making that an even longer concourse. In this instance, we're adding more classrooms. We're not necessarily adding the travel distance, but something that we haven't really talked much about because it's really kind of just germane to the schematic design on phase 1, is that if you look to the right of the D-wing, that rectangular space is that outdoor courtyard that Susan described. That's basically considered, that's school program space, because that connector is in effect, it secures the space, right? So now we have a new exterior door. So we envision, when the weather's nice, kids will actually exit the E-wing, go right into that courtyard as a shortcut to get into their classrooms under the B-wing. So for some students, this is actually going to make it a little bit shorter, number one, or number two, at least take a few kids out of the stairway, which is a pretty packed place to be right now at McCall Middle School.
I was mostly concerned just for myself, because I just figured out how to get around the hall, so.
Isn't it something when we're there for our first night at open house and we're all
I know my kid's here somewhere, I just don't know where.
Wait till you get to the high school, you're gonna get confused.
Can I also, just to clarify something, when Vince was describing we moved the teacher's workspace out of phase 1, that's accurate, but I just want everybody to understand that's nothing that we did after town meeting. That was a decision we made before we asked for the funding. So conceptually in the master plan, we thought that would be a phase 1 item. But in the interest of just expediting the project and getting those 3 classrooms online, not jeopardizing the project, we decided that's an important piece. We'll put that in phase 2. So when we went to fall town meeting and asked for the funding for phase 1, it was understood that was not in phase 1. That would come later.
One other small thing is that by putting the athletic space down on the sort of ground floor of this, you preserve the storage area where the team rooms are now the sort of makeshift team rooms. And this building, as we've grown and taken nooks and crannies in, and all the storage space, almost. So it's good to be able to preserve a little bit more storage space for the custodians and so forth.
So
There it is.
It's rather early in the analysis to tell whether the scheduling of it will meet your class schedules. Whether construction scheduling will be able to meet the enrollment schedule. And I presume that will be analysis.
Well, I think that's part of weighing the option. I mean, you could have a great option, but it's a 3-year construction period, and you only have, say 15 months. So, I mean, those are all the things that get considered in this venting of all these options.
Is there a range of a number, Vince, that,
Can't give you anything just yet, no, we just conceived of this not that long ago, so.
all this?
You might not
last
be able to deduct the interest,
That's right.
because it's over $750,000.
Yep.
I would remind folks that in the master plan, we thought phase 2 would be between 5.8 and 6.5, but remember, that did not include the teacher workspace, because that was envisioned as a phase 1 component. Those assumptions also didn't carry any real assumptions around project delivery, so phase 1, we're assuming, is going to be traditional design, bid, build. If we were to go with a CM at risk and a project manager, which is something I know the EFPBC will be talking about. But different project delivery models come with additional costs. Pros and cons, but
Administrative costs.
yeah, sure, administrative costs that you then have to add into the cost of the project. So those conversations yet to come.
Under $10 million?
Oh, we're hoping, sure.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I just say one thing, way back, and I think Lance probably remember when we were first doing that bill, and that was at the capital planning committee, and they asked me, what do you think? I said, I don't know, 5 or 6 million, off the top of my head. We didn't, right?
2 to 4.
Oh,
8.
no, it went up, and that was just, I said, that's the last time, unless I had some
Don't
number, I
say.
can really put my hands, I'm not giving anybody any number, because you guys latched onto it like a, a cupcake.
Well, I know that both the school committee and the board will want to have a realistic number for the public to understand. If,
Yes.
again, the board sees fit to
Yes.
put it on as a debt exclusion referendum in the March election, so, and that's part of the
And the
exercise.
sooner the better because of the need to market it.
Yes.
I mean, my question would be, do we want to have this on the ballot without town meeting action prior to it? This timeline seems to assume that there's no special town meeting to take action on it.
You're quite right, Mariano, and that actually came from some work sessions we had with Flansburgh back in, I want to say it was maybe July. We looked at the scope for Phase 2, which would, whether we're talking about 1A, 1B, or 2. We're talking about an early site excavation, utility relocation package, footings and foundations, erecting a steel frame or structure. There would be significant work that has to happen in the summer of 19. In order to make that happen, we have to have the question in the spring ballot, followed by spring town meeting, for Flansburgh to then get going on the documents so that Meg can then advertise and we get going on that early package. So we put, that very question came up about, chicken or egg, what does it need to be? The schedule spoke to the need to do it this way.
The board could call for a special town meeting in that March timeframe if you felt it was necessary to explain it and then have it be on the ballot. But you did, I thought, a very good job of explaining what the potential was at fall town meeting, that, that you were authorizing the design.
I mean, typically, all the other schools, we always want the town meeting vote and then
First.
the override, but it's the same, the schedule is driving certain things.
Yeah, I don't think we have the luxury here, but as Richard was saying, I
Yeah.
mean, I think that, Chris has presented to town meeting on a couple occasions, I think. Three, yeah. So I think everybody is at least aware at that level of what we're doing, and and thank you, Chris and Susan and Bob, for all the work that you've done on this. I mean, this is not necessarily exactly maybe what you thought being on the school committee was going to be about when you got on, but it's a major value to the town. We appreciate it. And the other thing that we'll have to consider too when we look at the special town meeting is, and the debt exclusion override, is if we're looking to add things like lights on Skilling's Field to the debt exclusion. When we look at things like the later school start times, we're in a crunch there, and
Right.
I think that there's a lot to do for us to get those fields under maximum use. So,
Okay.
I would, I guess, we can review the question whether we ought to have a special town meeting or not, but I would encourage you, as you've done before during the master plan study, to think about holding informal briefings
Yep.
for town meeting members who are interested, and do that. I think they would be quite interested in the schedule coming up, particularly if it's more logical, if it's cost effective and more timely. I think it would be something that probably, whether formal or particularly an informal set of meetings, then we ought to let town meeting work through that process just as quickly as you are, and frequently to do it.
It's a good idea.
It's a good idea.
I understand the timeline, and I'd rather not have a special election, because during the regular election, we get more participation from the town, and it also saves us a bit of money from having a special election, but maybe we can think about calling a special town meeting in early March before the election, that way time. Also, to give the voters a better idea of what town meeting is thinking about from an effort standpoint.
In particular, because population's been increasing, school population enrollment's been going up, but we've also been putting a very heavy sort of burden on taxpayers to do the Vincent Owen High School. I want to do that, but also I think letting as many people know as possible why we're doing it and how cost effective it is, or how cost effective it can be, it is to our benefit.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yep.
If you would indulge me, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge something you said right before we came to the table with respect to the MSBA. I agree very much with Lance and others at the table. We should be resubmitting again for the Lynch and Morocco projects, but I would like Michael to just reassure folks that the master plan, in fact, anticipated the MSBA saying no. We anticipated them saying yes, and there's a schedule for that. But we thought, well, if they say no, then what? So folks can find in the summary, the executive summary, which is not a terribly long read, I think we have 4 different schedule scenarios that say, what if the MSBA says yes in the fall of 17? What if it's 18? What if it's 19? What then for a Lynch? What then for a Morocco? And how does that translate to capacity coming online and when? So I'm certainly a little disappointed they said no, but I don't know that's a tremendous surprise, Susan, but, we were anticipating.
I think everybody was anticipating that a
Right.
little bit. I was more wondering if they had given us an indication, if there's any direction for us to head in order to, submitting the same thing over and over again. I don't know if that's what they're looking for, but I think for them, it's time and money. So I think we'll get there soon.
And they did personally encourage us to submit again next
Right,
year.
when they were
When
visiting.
Executive
Yeah.
director came and did a walkthrough. That was their message.
Yeah, when they tell you that you didn't make the list, they don't really tell you very much about how you should go about resubmitting. They sort of have done their job, spent their time on it. But when the executive director was here and took the tour, he did ask the principals whether there was any, impact on their ability to deliver the curriculum, which is not something we had said was a reason that we were asking to remodel. We had sort of just stressed the structural problems and the overcrowding. So I think going back in, I think we should probably speak to that curriculum piece, to whether it's really the kind of space where you can deliver a 21st century education, and clearly it's not. So that is definitely on our list.
Great, and the executive summary, is that available on the Winchester Public Schools page, or it's on?
It is. If you go to the Winchester Public Schools page, click the link for master plan, and it's there the first 19 pages. You can also go to tinyurl.com/Winchester Master Plan, and it will pop up there as well.
And is your phone number there too? So
It is not. It is not.
We'll make sure that we post that, Chris. We got it.
I'm never home. I'm either at a hockey rink or I'm at Parkhurst.
That's right.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate
Thank you.
that clarification. It's very helpful.
Thanks for having us.
Thank
See
you.
you on January 22nd.
Yep.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the traffic issues on private ways, and I know that we had some requests from some residents that went through the Traffic Advisory Committee. I don't know, Richard, if you're able to update us on
Sure.
that process.
Beth Rudolph from our town engineer has provided the board with some traffic count information in the area of concern here, Aristotle and Socrates in and around that area. So some of the information is self-explanatory, how many car trips at what times of the day, a little bit about speed, but provides the board, I think, with a little bit of insight as to the level of vehicular activity in and over those streets. And we've previously confirmed from legal counsel that owners in and around private ways should not be installing their own stop signs. So again, that's a topic that at least the board was made aware of, the interest of certain homeowners in and around those ways to have considered. So, as you know, the board has, in some other areas, used a series of traffic calming initiatives, whether it's restricting turns that come out of streets on a one-way basis in order to make sure that throughways aren't being used just as a total shortcut to get out to a main street to take a left or a right. You've restricted the time of day that entry can be made on certain streets. We've installed a speed hump, temporary speed humps in certain locations. So you have a little bit of experience with all of those steps. And certainly, you know, you've always entertained the idea of the installation of stop signs. This is more listed as kind of a listening session and effort. If you were going to take some of these measures, we would post it. We would notify the entire neighborhood of your intention to actually adopt certain measures and recommendations. So this information is more for your information and for you to let us know whether or not you think you need any more in terms of getting to a final decision about what, if anything, to do.
I did not see any information on traffic counts.
Should be Beth Rudolph email of December 14th.
Okay.
I don't think it made it into this packet.
It didn't get it.
I have seen the email.
But you have all.
I think some of the information gives us a reason to kind of evaluate it further. One of the reasons we endeavored this new traffic calming program is to take a holistic view of neighborhoods and traffic going in and out rather than just street by street and planting stop signs in place. So I think that we started here, unfortunately, with the snow that came, we had to pull up some of the lines for that were doing the traffic counts, but I think it's worthwhile, and I know there are some residents here as well, and I don't know if this time if you guys wanted to come up and just speak a little bit to the issue.
Okay, I believe.
Introduce yourself.
Yeah, certainly. I believe you've been communicating with Mr. Whitehead and yourself.
Yes.
So I'm Liam Clancy. I'm resident of 9 St. Thomas More. This gentleman will introduce themselves, I guess.
I'm sorry, I just came. Is it for the Socrates area?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so my name is Fotis Barlos, at 8 Socrates Way. I've been there for about 20 years almost.
My name is John McEwen. I'm at 12 Aristotle.
Evan Mead at 8 St. Thomas More. I'm Claudia Harper's husband.
Oh, nice to meet you.
She's been in contact with you.
Yes, thank you very much. It's been very helpful. So
She is doing well and out of the hospital soon.
Yes, we all do. Thank you.
So could I, if I may, just get clarification? Did we say that legally it's not permissible for us to install anything ourselves?
Correct.
that's right.
Okay, all right. So I guess what we're a little bit confused about is who is responsible for these roads. The builder who constructed a lot of these homes up there, we're getting some conflicting information on whose responsibility it is to put in these traffic calming measures, because he says that he technically owns the roads, if that's the case.
Can I add something? As I said, I've been there for almost 20 years now, right? So when we first moved in, what we heard was that those roads were owned by Mahoney's. And because of that, we couldn't put any measures, couldn't put any signs. There is not even a speed limit sign on those roads. As you know, Socrates is very wide, and people are cutting through and going very fast. So there's no speed limit, there's no any sign at all, there's no speed bumps, there's nothing. And quite often, I mean, we all have small kids, right? I've raised 3 kids. They're small there, and quite often kids play on the street and cars zipping by, and they're not stopping at all. And they're not even a single stop sign or a single, speed limit sign. Now, at the time when we moved in, we're told that because they're owned by Mahoney's, there's nothing the town can do. What I'm saying here, we need to have some common sense. At the minimum, there need to be some speed limit signs on the streets. At the minimum. Not to mention stop signs and other things. Because, I've been there for such a long time, and luckily we didn't have any accident. The only thing that we had, our dog was hit by a truck under the construction. Not asking for anything there. Luckily it was not any of the kids. So anyway, so if there's anything to do, I don't know who owns the roads right now, it's the builder. I don't know who owns the roads, must be the builder, right? Okay. I don't know how to resolve that, how it needs to be resolved.
Yeah, and I have the same clarifying question. You know, we've been told we can't do anything, and at the same time, we've been told the town can't do anything. And that, you know, those are in conflict, because somebody has to be able to do something.
The town has the authority to adopt stop sign measures, one-way measures, in and out measures, street out measures.
We've been told the police are not authorized to enforce any measures put in place.
That's not true.
Okay, so that, like, there've been a lot of things.
And that's where we kind of started with this question, and
Right.
we, put it through to town council. They came back with a recommendation, confirmed that the town is in control of the traffic here and safety.
I'd also like to add, you know, one of the things that's very different from on the streets that we're discussing, there are no sidewalks. So we have pedestrians on the streets all the time. So, you know, just this concept that 30 miles an hour is an acceptable speed limit is utterly ridiculous. You know, it doesn't even meet standard code or standard guidelines in terms of sight distances for turns, for stopping at 30 miles an hour. And then we have pedestrians there too. So I hope that all this can be taken into account, because, you know, as you said, we're all very lucky that no child, no human has been injured. But I've seen people, you know, I'm getting my mail in my car, I've seen people flying down the road, swerve around me, and there's a pedestrian right there. You know, and I've been thankful no one's gotten hit.
With the new houses now that are up there, of which I own one, I've got 3 kids. We have 12 kids that are all under the age of 10 up there now. We've got 3 houses that have yet to be occupied. They will surely move in with small family. I think you've got a small child?
There's 2 children.
2 children. So it's likely to become more and more of an issue. Certainly I think where Evan lives and where I live, the front of my home is quite exposed to very fast-moving traffic up along St. Thomas More. So I'm greatly concerned for their well-being, and a lot of the kids tend to gravitate towards that end of the street. You know, we want these kids to have the freedom to move around, and it's heart-stopping every time that they're out in front.
And I would say that there are 2 specific intersections where I see very acute challenges, which to me are personally, of course, tremendously important with the development of the area, that are, in my line of sight, the intersection of St. Thomas More and Aristotle. You see a tremendous amount of through traffic, either coming from Cambridge to Johnson through the ledges, or coming in from Johnson down St. Thomas More. The other area I'd say is probably very recent, if not new, due to the development of the area, where you have large brush and trees that are essentially blocking a 4-way intersection that has no sort of stop sign and has very poor visibility. And with the increased through traffic coming through the neighborhood, a lack of comprehension that no stop sign doesn't mean carry on, hazards what I think is a very large risk, because there's very poor visibility in that area, and as you've heard multiple times, many small children, many families new to the neighborhood.
Which intersection is the one that is, you're saying it has obstructed views?
So if you're, I guess would it be Socrates and St. Thomas More?
That's a problem where people
Yeah.
are coming up off Wainwright, but Socrates and, I'm spacing on the road that parallels St. Thomas More.
Yes.
Plato. So Socrates and Plato is the 4-way stop. That's a problem. But
Still lacks a stop.
Yeah, and Socrates and St. Thomas More is a big problem, because you don't really see down Wainwright. So there are people that are just flying up Wainwright to pass the 2 lights to get from Cambridge over to Johnson.
But also we have where Aquinas is intersecting with St. Thomas More. We've got 2 brand-new homes.
Yes.
We've got my house right on the corner. We have my fence and the trees that obstruct the view, and people come down past your house very quickly,
Very quickly.
and intersect with Aquinas very quickly, which is where most of these kids are congregating right now.
And and there's always There's always contractors parked on one of these roads, and
Sure.
you see people just going fast and just swerving right around them.
Can I ask why there are no stop signs on those streets?
Well, stop signs are recommendation from the town engineer who has
Okay.
gotten involved in a lot more traffic engineering than she probably ever wanted to, but has indicated to us that the guidelines for traffic calming,
Yeah.
you know, stop signs are not really a solution to those problems.
Oh, it's not, they're
So
not meant to
that's
stop
why
signs.
we've kind of
Mhm.
decided to take, you know, more of a
Yeah, makes sense.
holistic view of the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And I mentioned to Claudia as well, I live on Amberwood around the corner, and I cut through your neighborhood sometimes as well. And so I know that, you know, it needs to be, there are certain times when it makes sense to do that and times when it doesn't. And so if we look at that, I think we can see maybe if we restrict certain traffic during certain times, or if we put certain speed bumps, or we have kind of a pilot program in the neighborhood, we can come up with a good solution. Because stop signs don't really do it.
Do people, though, do people pay attention to signs that restrict based on time? Is that a...
If you enforce them, yeah, I think
Yeah.
they pay less attention to speed limit signs.
Speed
to be
limits?
honest with you.
Really?
But,
Yeah. Really? They don't pay attention to speed limit signs?
And when people stop at a stop sign, they tend to speed up because they've been stopped.
yeah, right.
So that's, that's the issue with stop signs, is that, I mean, it helps if the intersection itself is dangerous. But as far as slowing down traffic, I mean, I live not too far away on Algonquin Road, I mean, people stop at the intersection, and then they're doing 30, you know, 30 feet later, right? So it doesn't help if you're one house away from the stop sign.
And the lack of sidewalks, you know, on the west side and how it was built out they complicate the process, because it does make it more dangerous, and there is a lot more growth as well that is in the line of sight.
So when permission was given for these houses to be built, was that not a consideration or a requirement of the builder in order for permission to be granted? Like, would we not have envisioned 20 more children being up there?
We'll have to do a little bit of research to see what the subdivision requirements were at the time this was.
Right.
My guess is that the volume of traffic when it was initially laid out was pretty low, because the development wasn't at the scale you're looking
Right,
at today.
right.
And there probably wasn't either the need or the requirement to put in stuff, but, you know, some of them may not have required it at the time. I think we need to go back and ask the town planner to take a look and see
Traffic advisory.
the ownership. Well, I'm looking first at the ownership of the road. The typical subdivision is the property owners own to the center of the street, and all have an easement to use the street. If that may be different in this case, we'd have to look at but regardless of that, the state and law is that if they're open to the public, you know, to use, then it's the town, as Mr. Howard said, it's the town controls the regulations. So we can certainly come back and put in stop signs, speed signs, and other things to do that that are required. Sidewalks would be a slightly different matter because we don't technically own the
And
right
I
of way.
wasn't
But that's
necessarily
something
asking
that-
for them, I was just
Well,
trying
but
to
it's been
address that
an
there are
issue
a lot of
we've heard
pedestrians.
about town-wide, and
Yeah.
some of the.
What about
areas.
speed bumps? Is that that's a
We've-
complication for emergency vehicles, as we understand it?
Yeah, it's not very popular. What in the traffic working group that we've been looking at similar issues, speed bumps, people tend to slow down to go over them, and then they get frustrated, and between that one and the next speed bump, they hammer it. And so it almost aggravates the problem, and then the police and fire don't find them that attractive when they're rushing someplace.
Right.
But there are other.
Or people speed over them, disregard them completely, then the neighbors are all going, I'm getting tired of the thump, thump, thump as they go over the speed limit.
Right.
We installed a temporary one on Myrtle Street, and that's exactly, we got a comment that said, great, it's slowing traffic down. We got a comment that
Can sleep
said,
now.
all I hear is thump, thump, thump. You know.
There's a bunch of things we can do, and I think what we're hearing. Town meeting did approve a town-wide 25-mile-an-hour speed limit.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that everybody will observe it, but, you know, we can certainly, the town can post for that in the areas, and we can put posting exceptions in there. In other areas, looking at changing access and turning at times of day, Beth Rudolph, our town engineer, gave us some data count, quick and dirty data counts, I think. The volume of traffic doesn't look to be outrageous, nor the average speeds, but our traffic counters weren't programmed to pick up the highest speeds, so, and it'll change by time of day we can look that. Her guess, looking at it, quickly looking at it, is that if you look at what jams up on Route 3 and when through the Google mapping system, it mostly seems to be in the morning. You've got a traffic queue that goes back up toward the Whole Foods Woburn Mall. And I'm guessing that what she was saying, I'm guessing what happens is that people turn right on Wainwright to head over to Johnson Road in Lexington.
That's right, that's right.
Coming home in the evening, her counts, she didn't see as much of that, because once you get to the bottom of Wainwright, you have to double back down in order to get around the island there, so.
Yeah, but Johnson can get very backed up.
Yeah, we can look at, restricting right turns onto Wainwright. The problem with sort of an area if it's a small road affecting a few houses, it's no big deal. But if it's a large area like you're in, it's an awful lot. Then we'll get all the residents coming in and saying, I can't get home, or can't get anywhere in the morning. So there's a series of things we can do. We've got some counts, but they're not particularly, other than the recent ones, but we have to
Can I
look
ask
at
something
the
else?
flows.
Can you narrow, can we make the roads narrower?
That's a possibility. We're looking at Highland Avenue, a bunch of other roads, just a neck down to make people.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
We've started painting on both Highland and on Washington as part of repaving. Our DPW director, we've adopted the same policy that the state has on, if you look at Mystic Valley Parkway, they'll put on a double yellow line, and then instead of just pushing the fog line over to the edge, they'll bring it out only 10 feet. So it narrows the lanes, it brings opposing cars a little closer together so people perceptually slow down, and it creates a sort of a de facto bike pedestrian space, not necessarily, but we could certainly look at some of those issues.
Complicated though, how does that get worked out when it's a private road?
How do we get past this private road, public road issue? It doesn't.
We would have to, we can certainly mandate the installation on our own ticket of stop signs, painting and other stuff. The classic way of doing that is to make a safety improvement to a privately owned road and assess the abutters. So that's not always popular, but that's a way of spreading the cost of making, if you're doing, for example, neck downs or sidewalks or something, it could be done that way too.
So there's a very easy way to solve this that we were discussing on the way over, and that is, and Wainwright used to end before it went on to St. Thomas More. I mean, if it is a private road, why could the owner of the private road just terminate it right there? I mean, to be honest, that would solve 90% of our issues.
Yeah,
Because it would not prevent anybody to come
the issue
through.
you'd want to take a look at is, what about safety access? Every time you create a dead-end road in a fairly large neighborhood, you create problems with police, fire, ambulance, and then they all come down and beat up on us if they don't like their
Might have been a
the closure,
condition of
yeah.
the original
Might have been, we can see what it was, yeah.
subdivision as well, that
Traffic.
And there's improved, projects there, 100 units, up by the ledges as well.
Ledges would still have access out of two areas, so you really wouldn't be changing.
Well, if you do that, then all the traffic is gonna go through Socrates. If you cut it there, the Wainwright's gonna go through Socrates.
No, I'm cutting it before. It wouldn't,
Oh, before, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, I see, before it opens in that area? I
because
see.
you can tell the pavement has changed.
I see.
But and that's the way it used to be before that development was ever done. And it was stopped right there. And that would, to be honest, it would be a pain in the neck for me because I come up Wainwright all the time, but it would definitely slow
Small
traffic
price to
down
pay.
through the neighborhood.
I guess I truly do appreciate that the engineer has taken a look and done the counts and looked at speed, and that there is such a wealth of knowledge about the different interventional tactics and management approaches. And I guess the only concern that it leaves me with is counts and speed are, I would say, relevant but not a fundamental issue from the neighborhood safety perspective. Counts and speed, again, relevant, but driving behavior and visibility limitation should also be taken into account when considering what kind of traffic management approaches are appropriate at specific intersections. Like really in the nitty-gritty detail of the visibility of a specific place, the human traffic and the human counts, and the sizes of those humans. Those are also very important, selfishly, of course, to me. I haven't heard yet that that's part of the review and assessment of the area. Obviously, I feel it should be. It tells an important part of the story, an important part of why we're all here. That's just one concern that I have so far, just from hearing the assessment as is.
Yeah, so,
And I know that's
so,
not something that
so let me
hasn't
say,
been
yes,
brought up
I think
before.
we would agree with you. I think grabbing the counts and getting some basic information is a starting point. Because if we do have people who come in and say it's terrible, and you go out and do the counts and find it's 2 cars, and one of them they're driving. So, I mean, and if the counts, I mean, it begins to build a base. I think, quite frankly, we have not taken any detailed look, and the thing we found with the traffic working group over the last year is that one needs to go intersection by intersection through these areas with the residents and say what works and what doesn't, and we haven't started anything like that. All we've done is grab a few numbers off the...
I think it's enlightening to hear, very interesting to hear what happens when you put in these different types of calming measures. But from our perspective right now, just the optics of having absolutely nothing up there is very disconcerting to us as a parent. So whether or not the stop signs actually deliver the desired effect, or it's at least getting us more comfortable with the area. I mean, we don't even have white lines on the road to indicate where the car should stop.
Not even speed limit signs.
So
and it's been like this since I've been there. I mean, those roads have been like this
Well, it's helpful
decades.
for us to hear from you, living in the neighborhood, and what the concerns are. And maybe we can take some short-term measures. We would have to have a public hearing and go through the process. This is more of a listening session for us to be informed about what to kind of direct our evaluation.
So what's the official approach then we take as residents from here on out? Do we submit something in writing?
I think would suggest that, I think a simple letter to the town manager saying we perceive a significant problem up there and we'd like to convene a working group to work with the town to begin to sort through, what are the individual issues and what can be done. Just going out and doing something and posting a bunch of signs often turns out not to be the core of the solution. So, it's worth thinking it through. I wouldn't put it off for a year, but you want to start sooner rather than later and doing that, working through it. And because while you're very interested in doing something, I know that as soon as we propose something and post a public hearing, we'll get deluged by your neighbors who say, you're ruining the American way of life. I want to be able to go fast through the neighborhood, and you'll sit there rolling your eyes. But it really is better, well thought through solutions for which there's a neighborhood consensus. Makes it a lot easier for us to implement it and make sure they're working. But I would say a letter to the town manager asking
we have enough that we
to move really quickly on it and go.
Where we could establish a group and move forward with some recommendations. So I think
We would send it to traffic advisory and let them, that's our usual process. Our police chief, our fire chief, our town engineer, our DPW director sit as an advisory group together with everything else that the board is doing. And if we tell them we want a holistic look at the corridor from Wainwright over to Johnson, and to have, a series of recommendations, whether they're stop signs, crosswalks, other traffic calming, and engage the neighborhood at the same time.
Can I ask, have there been similar concerns in the past that haven't been similar? I mean, for that neighborhood. I realize now that there are more houses, there are more people, there are more small children. But when we moved in about 20 years ago, we had small children too. And there were quite a few small children at the time, and now most of them are gone. So I remember at the beginning, there would be some discussions about, and what we heard was that since those roads are private, there's nothing the town can do. And that was, 15, 20 years ago. Have there been any review of those areas before? Have been any raised concerns before, or how was those handled?
Not since I've been here,
Okay.
there's not been a request.
Okay.
what should we expect in terms of timing on it? If if we're in the system, when might we actually see a decision on it?
I think it required, the short answer to that is when there's a consensus on what would actually work, and that could come quickly, or it could take some months. I would suggest we get started in January at some point.
Could we expect that perhaps by the summer of
Yeah,
of
for the
next
spring,
year?
I think that would be our
Yeah,
intention.
Yeah, or even sooner.
Yeah, sooner. And part of it is we have to evaluate the impact on the rest of the corridor as well, because it's really a bubble that you kind of push around with the traffic. And we established this traffic calming working group because with Waze and all the other social media applications,
Right.
Winchester is right in the crosshairs of
yeah.
people going everywhere. So a problem may not have existed years ago.
Right.
It's something that is very much a problem now. So a lot of people using Cambridge Street as corridor are now cutting over, and that's what I think that you're
Right.
feeling more of a pressure.
Yeah, so there's three things going on. The area has developed, so there's a lot more people moving in and out. The economy is full blast, people are working, traveling. And then for every one of you who has Waze posted on their dashboard,
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
it's saying, oh, let's jam down St. Thomas More because
Yeah.
it's a lot quicker. And if it's a few minutes delay on St. Thomas More, let's run around the rest of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
We're seeing that all over town.
Yep.
So what is,
I'm just going to say, one of the things we do the traffic counts for is to look at the option of maybe making it a one-way street during certain times of the day, or just making it a one-way street in one direction. That's not always the most popular option, but usually we rely on the neighborhood to tell us, after they've done that. We did that with Gwen Road recently, because all of a sudden, once the traffic light went in at Everett, people started using Glen as a cut around to get up to Church Street. And so we made it one way from Church Street out to Cambridge Street. But that was largely based on traffic counts, which showed us, that, and much as this one is, that the traffic in the evening and the morning at the peak hours is about the same.
yeah,
And that's about 10% of 10 to 15% of the total daily count.
So let me understand this. So during the rush hour, the traffic counts in those streets are 10% more than regular, or?
Well, I mean, it's just 10% of the total. I mean, for example, and on Tuesday, the 5th of December, from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., there were 25 cars. Now, this was going from St. Thomas More Drive going towards Aristotle. Okay? Which I guess in the morning you'd expect that to be a little bit more heavier because people are trying to avoid the light at Johnson and
they
Cambridge,
could have
right?
cut out, where they put these bars, they could have cut out Socrates, which most of the people I see cut through come down Socrates over to Wainwright.
Well, they also did St. Thomas More going towards Socrates, so, maybe we need to do some counts on Socrates as well and
Aristotle,
some other places. But as was pointed out in the memo, they had to pull this is not the ideal time to do that.
There were only 20 cars from within
25
1 hour.
cars going down going
1 hour, yeah.
in 1 hour, going toward Aristotle Drive on St. Thomas More.
Really? Wow, I find it hard to believe, because sometimes I wait for the bus for my son, if you...
Well, it says 25, then this is 8 to 9 a.m.
I realize that.
And it was 25, 32, 27, and then they also did one from 11 to 12, which is, around noon, and the count was the same. With a total count of the day of only around 300,
I see.
somewhere between 275 and 325 cars, with an average speed of 32 mile an hour.
That's pretty fast.
Average speed
That's pretty
of
fast.
32?
Pretty fast.
Well, the 85% speed was 32. Now, if we do a traffic study and put a speed limit out there, unless we had the special permission, that would be the speed.
Really? Is that 30?
That's how you set it.
Is it 30, or that's the speed limit?
But you also have to, we talked about the lack of sight lines, but we also have no sidewalks. So you're going 30 miles an hour, and there's
no visibility.
there's a caregiver or parent walking with a carriage less than 3 feet from that car.
30 miles an hour is too fast in a residential area.
Yeah,
How can it be 30 miles an hour?
I think that's our biggest concern.
This
There's
is
the
the
volume.
85th percent speed. That's saying that they took all the cars that they measured the speed on, 85% of them were going
We're
at
going
speed or
below-
less.
below, no, faster than 32.
I realize, but how can it be in that residential area to the speed limit? If we were to put the speed limit to be 30, how can it be 30 miles?
No, so now, after fall town meeting, we now have the ability to set 25 miles an hour.
Oh, okay, I see, I see.
Before fall town meeting, it would have been 30.
30 minimum.
Except going through for special permission, but that's changed since fall town meeting, so it would be.
I see,
25 now.
I see.
But I will say too, that what we found is painting lines on the road makes a big difference, narrowing the road. If we were able to find some funding to do sidewalks there, that certainly would create a safer environment. Well, we could work with that, but the issue is on the enforcement side, we can put 25 mile per hour, but unless we have a police officer that's there, every day giving tickets, it's going to be, people are gonna press their luck a little bit, and we don't. So that's why we've looked to more structural changes than we have speed limit signs.
Well, that's why, I think we have to have the traffic advisory committee look at this area. Thank you for coming, this has just been an issue all throughout town. Really, the cut-through traffic.
All but we're the most important.
You may be the most important.
That's one quick question. Has really become a problem very fast. So, this advisory group has been working for a little bit. We're trying different things, like we mentioned on Myrtle Street, we tried the bumps, they do reduce the speed, they cause a lot of noise, so we are trying different things. Definitely structural changes to the street is the best thing, curb bump outs, narrowing the street, things like that, but of course, those are the most expensive things to do, so, but thank you for your feedback.
Final question. In the data collection process that you did you have speed band count bands on Aristotle itself?
No, it's
No,
just
they were
on
on
St.
St.
Thomas.
Thomas.
It was on St. Thomas
Just
More.
let me back up in Beth's, because
But we would,
this is, we told her, we heard the concerns, we said, Beth, can you grab some counts before the snowplows come out? And she said, yes, and they, once the snowplows come out, the trigger tapes get wiped out and your counts are, I think what we would want to do is put together, I can see 4 volunteers in front of us, we want to put together a working group and begin to go through piece by piece, decide where more counts are necessary, where intersection, observations or turning counts are needed. Because presumably there'll be sections where you do and sections where you don't, and sort that through. And then again, build the, it's going to require a lot of work on your part, can we build a consensus of your neighbors, past the 4 people there on what to do. And we found solutions in other neighborhoods. They're not easy, they're not quick, and they're not simple, but they're buried out there somewhere, and it's a matter of digging out and finding what people can do. And we've in a few areas
Do you
tried
women
some
have
piloting.
anything else that you wanted to say? While you're here, I gather you're listening intently. You must be here for this listening session.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just had one question though. I know you said about 25 cars with the traffic. What happens when those apartments go up?
Well, that would, you would expect those counts would go up.
Up? So that would change whatever we decide to do, right? Would it?
It could, it might not.
We have the traffic studies, from the 416 Cambridge? Yes, we have the traffic engineering counts and estimates from that, so we know roughly what the traffic generation would be over the course of the day, and that can be taken into account. They tend to be spread out pretty substantially. What I'm hearing is the volume of traffic going through on the counts is not particularly high. It sounds like the speed and safety is the really critical issue to look at.
I don't want to be here after.
You got more road than you need, is what I hear.
So we'll do a kind of a deeper dive. We'll work with you on establishing a working group and just evaluating the situation and working with the traffic advisory committee because there is a process that we will have to go through and notify the neighbors. And I know that you've been in touch with a lot of the other neighbors too, and they probably would want to be a part of the process in some way too.
Mike,
so.
if you want to volunteer one of those folks to leave their name and address, or all of them, so we can know who to get back in contact with, it would be good.
Sure, if there's somebody.
Well, I think Claudia has been.
Yeah, Claudia has everybody on that.
Leading the charge in communication, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
perhaps we should just continue to work through Claudia and let her get out.
All right.
Great. Thank
Very
you,
good.
gentlemen.
Well, thanks a lot.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Thank you.
So you have some other traffic information in the packet. We rewrote the proposed traffic study policy for, associated with school construction. Put in the language that was recommended.
We're going to, I think, continue that discussion.
Yeah.
I think the school committee wanted to weigh in and had some good feedback on it.
Okay.
I think that Mr. Nixon had some suggestions for us, so we can put it on another meeting agenda, and we'll move on to number 4, traffic and transportation program proposal. Lance, I don't know if you wanted to.
Sure, just give you an overview. I think this is an outgrowth of probably more than a year's worth of work with the sort of informal traffic working committee. I know that a number of you, I mean, in fact, I think all the selectmen have participated at some point or another in the discussions and hearings. During that process, we identified lots of problems across town, and I think people, we've seen several of the groups come in here from Myrtle and on out to the other Glen Road, and others looking for solutions, Highland Avenue. And we'll continue, I expect to hear, as the folks on Aristotle and St. Thomas More have pointed out this evening, there's lots of problems out there to solve. One of the conclusions that the working group came to was that we needed to institutionalize in a more formal way our program to address traffic problems. I think in previous years, they've tended to be addressed ad hoc, and a lot of the boards said, gee, are we just shoving the problem? And the same comment you made, Mike, we're just moving the problem from one neighborhood to another. And I think with the advent of Waze and the apps, that's more aggressive now than ever. So what we talked about, and the 3 parts to this program are just reflect what the group was suggesting. One was to basically ask the town manager to establish an interdepartmental traffic and transportation program. And then, and we've laid out here, purpose to improve safety and effectiveness, what's it to be covered. It's not just roads, but it's bikeways, walkways, and others, such like that. And then what we expect the program to do, which was to identify traffic and transportation safety and capacity and performance needs, develop solutions, assess their costs, benefits, and risks, and, basically set out and bring to us a multi-year action program. We've taken a first step at documenting all of that in the road book, which we've talked about before, and, at least laying out the next 3 years. I think it's the planning board's responsibility to begin to take that out and say what's a longer-term vision on that, but this sort of a more tactical program to work on. And, I expect that we would probably hear more than once a year from the manager people on this, but, report at least annually on that. So part 1 is just, to ask the board to enable or authorize a program to be created, which is de facto out there already today, but things. And then the question was, how do we begin to get public input and support? So I think the working group was much in favor of formalizing the working group as an advisory committee. And what we've suggested here is it be an 11-member committee appointed by this board, but in consultation with, town manager, town moderator, chairpersons of the planning board, capital planning, school committee, finance, and so on. and that we look, in doing that, we look to provide as broad a representation as we can, neighborhoods, businesses, and transportation users. So we got people from the biking community, people from the business community, various precinct neighborhoods to do that. We're suggesting 3-year terms, rolling over as we do on all the other boards, and an elected chairperson. And we would charge this committee with, at least annually, advising the select board and the town manager on traffic issues and making recommendations for the program. I would think, as we did, Beth, Brian Zakelli, and Jay Gill did a really excellent job of attending our meetings and discussing, what works, what doesn't work, what are their limitations. So I think, whether it requires all 3 at their meetings or not, be something to work out. But I would suggest those 3 people at least be tagged as providing initial technical support to the committee, so they're not wandering off, wondering, can we really paint lines and who owns the stuff? And I thought it was important to basically give the town manager the capacity to, maybe coming to us for budget if it isn't there, but if the advisory committee needs technical assistance to begin to sort out the pros and cons of some of these, that the town manager have the ability to request and associate that. The third piece deals with our existing traffic advisory committee, so that we don't have conflicting advisory, we know which one we're talking about. Suggestion is to change the name and make it the traffic review committee, and basically make it the technical, professional best opinion on this stuff. So what you have there is pretty much the same structure we have today, which is, to be designated by the town manager, include at least town engineer, town planner, police and fire chiefs, DPW director, others, as needed, and would charge them, as we do today, to review all the proposals that come in, whether citizen staff or the advisory committee, what's coming in there, to basically give us their best professional advice on, cost, risk, technical feasibility, and so on, as we do today. And then again, if they need to reach out, as we have using FST or VHB, to authorize the town manager to be able to do that. So that's the core of it. I think there's a process. I've updated the request form, the back there, and everything like that, just to basically change the name to say, it would be reviewed by the traffic review committee now and the advisory committee, but the form's pretty much the same. A couple people have suggested that maybe I don't know whether we want to do this in the policy, but I think maybe just directions to the town manager. It'd probably be, since I anticipate a number of these things coming in, I've already had a number of people test out the form. Bob Deering was looking at trucks going up. Kenwin wanted no truck signs. The folks here will do it. Caroline Woodward has been looking at a series of projects over there that are dovetailed with Eversource line. Ben Keeler and a number of people along Highland Avenue have been, we don't have solutions, but they were saying, could we begin to get a formalized study, much like the Socrates way do. It would be very useful to begin to log these requests in formally, have a register for them, so that we know.
We can track their
Yeah,
progress.
what came in, what are we doing with it, when do we expect something out like that? The administrative staff and the engineer's office do a pretty good job of that, but I think it's going to snowball, and I think a formal logging process, work order kind of request that we keep track of.
I think it's helpful for us to coordinate that with DPW and with the whole
Yeah,
process,
yeah.
so we know if there's work being done in the area, and definitely it's
So that's an internal kind of management piece, so we don't lose track of all this stuff. But I think, annually, we're going to want to say what came in and how many did we deal with, and what's the pressure on the staff until town meeting, whether we're resolving these or not, and what resources are needed.
we talked about a workflow process for this.
Yeah, I don't know whether, I left that out of here thinking it'd get kind of too micro detailed.
Yeah,
and maybe it's a second recommendation. We, ask the town manager to look into and make recommendations on how to set up a workflow process for tracking and logging, tracking, and resolving these.
Kind of app.
Yeah, kind of app. The DPW was in the other week using some of the software there. They use it to track building requests, trees, a bunch of other things, and I don't know whether we can piggyback on that and use that as a way of tracking the stuff, because you know, they use that, how many requests are active, how many are in, what the costs were, how long does it take to resolve. It's basic functions that are available. We don't know whether we can make use, we can tweak one of their modules to make it work for this, but that was one initial idea. So, all right, if there are changes, edits on this, certainly open to suggestions. But this, in effect, formalizes what we've been doing for some time.
Yeah, so I had a suggestion. In section 2, subsection A, first paragraph, would be to change, the members shall be Winchester voters. Can we change that to residents?
We had a discussion on that. I thought, being self-serving on this, I thought for the board's purposes, eventually you have recommendations that come out of a group like this, and they have to go to our board and then to town meeting to get the resources. And I guess I would favor people who vote as well as just live in the town. I mean, we could say Winchester residents, but I'd assume they'd be active in supporting, at least on the advisory committee.
There's a number of residents who are not U.S. citizens and as such are not eligible to be registered voters. However, they pay taxes, property taxes just as much as everybody else.
I'd be happy to, if you feel strongly about it, Winchester residents would be fine.
I think we should, we should make it residents.
Sure, we'll make that change. So strike voters and put in residents.
Yeah. I also thought in 3B that I think often it's not the police chief, or the fire chief, but rather, the police chief, but rather or their designated representatives, because often the safety officer is the attendee at the meetings, not the police chief.
Or their designees at the end of all of those.
Yeah. Or their designees, yeah.
Designees, good, yeah. Okay, any other improvements? But we can come back to this and tweak it, 6 months from now when we find out it doesn't work as well as we thought, but.
Try it, and if it doesn't work, fix it.
And the other question, Lance, is where is this on the website for?
Right now, it's quietly buried within the selectmen's page, within a thing called transportation. I think that we put it there so that we would not lose track of it, but I think if the board accepts this and puts it into place, which we didn't have when we put it on the webpage, I would recommend to the town manager that maybe we look to move it up to the front page. I think Ms. Caffarella is working with Civic Plus to redesign the front web page. I don't think we'll have that instantly, but there's space up there, and eventually we'll have more spaces and put up exactly how it's worded and what's happening. But I think the key thing would be if you come to the town web page and you have a concern about putting in a request, that you ought to be able to get to this request piece into a broader explanation quickly, so.
Although we don't want to make it too easy to find.
Well, yeah, I think they'll find it whether we want it or not, but, it's buried for the moment so that it's online, but I was waiting for the board. If the board acts on this, then I would recommend we ask the town manager as a follow-up to do that.
Are there any other questions or comments from
fixes?
Board members? This is a culmination of a lot of work on Lance's part and the working group. Several meetings, and it's been very informative, and staff has really pitched in as well, so thank you, Lance. So I would take a motion to approve.
So if I may, I'd move that the board authorize the creation of a traffic and transportation program as outlined on the memo distributed to the board on, as it was dated Monday, December 18th, but as presented and modified today.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
So perhaps we want to make two follow-up motions, just sort of to ask the town manager if he would look into the issue of how to log and follow up on workflow, what workflow process tracking system would work. I'll make that as a motion.
You make that as a motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
The third one is that we authorize the town manager to look at moving the appropriate amount of information on the program and the request form to the front page. website, yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 5-0, motion carries.
Okay, I wish that finding the solutions to all these problems were as relatively easy as putting the program together, but we have a lot of work. The volume of traffic and the number of neighborhoods that have problems is really quite impressive relatively.
So in terms of setting up the advisory committee and getting some of this stuff rolling, do we have kind of like a
I think we should probably do
estimated?
two things, maybe sometime early January, get to do that. There are certainly a number of people who worked very hard on the working committee whom I would volunteer in absentia, but I think we probably ought to post and ask people to submit.
And we can submit some names. I know that there
Yeah.
are certain portions of it. I know Daphne Leonard had done quite a bit of work on the sidewalk, issue, and that should, or at least maybe a separate part of this
Yeah,
process.
there's a lot of people who've done.
A lot of people who've done different
considered
things,
work,
different
yeah.
focuses, so, I mean, and a lot of them brought a lot of good information to the table.
So we get it.
I mean, I capped it at 11, but if we are overwhelmed by people showing up, we can always increase it. But I think 11 is probably a reasonable.
It's going to keep focus and good attendance. And, not too big. So, great. Got it?
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you.
posting, I think, would be.
Okay, we will then move along to the consent agenda. Let's see, there was one table here.
Relay for Life.
Sure, we can just go through.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve for the 7th Annual Relay for Life of Winchester 2018, Manchester Field Track, Saturday, May 12th, 2018, beginning at 6 p.m. on Friday, May 11th. Second.
Yeah, and we do have the department approvals, and this is pretty standard for what we do.
It's been in place a couple of years.
For a couple of years, so.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve a staging permit for 810 Main Street Metro Frame Design.
Is that,
Um,
that's
that's
not
not-
on the
I
agenda.
don't seem to have that one. I don't know.
That was on the agenda for Monday, but it's not for tonight. What happened? Why is it not on the agenda for
That's a
tonight?
good question. I don't know how that got dropped off.
No,
I did.
it got, you did,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then the gentleman wanted to start, I think.
Yeah, he was looking at
Came down
stats.
and confirmed it,
We are.
but I think it's in here, but it's signed.
Okay, so it's been authorized, all right.
So if I'm reading the next one, the acceptance of, move that we accept the donation to the Board of Health Coalition for a Safer Community from Courtney and Joe Peters in the amount of $500.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the donation to Wildwood Cemetery for bench in the memory of the Peluso family donated by Rosemary Peluso Camerata, in the amount of $2,500.
Well, second, and with appreciation for the donation.
With its healthy donation.
Yeah.
And have we closed the loop on some of the confusion around that bench being
Programming,
installed
yeah.
and everything? And
Yeah.
we've spoken with Mrs. Camerata, okay.
I believe Mr. Shack.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries 5-0.
And Mr. Chairman, move that we approve corrected meeting minutes for Monday, November 27th, 2017, and Monday, December 4th, 2017.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries 5-0. Unless there's anything else from the board, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Well, you just might note that to the public, that the Attorney General has approved the change to the charter, renaming the Board of Selectmen to Select Board.
Except if I
We'll put that on
understand,
the,
it has to be.
Sub-
on the
Subject,
ballot
subject
before
to,
it becomes
of
official.
course, a ballot. So, but
March.
in March.
Great.
So a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much. Thank you, WinCam.
Thank you for taking